Ahoy, and welcome to Prague and another edition of the Mars Guide. Now in this episode we're going to look again at the Prague Astronomical Clock and the controversy, the row that has erupted recently over the 2018 restoration of the calendar dial or board, which is a major part of the astronomical clock. It seems that a lot of people are outraged by the 2018 restoration of the work of the calendar dial carried out by the artist and restorer Stanislav Jirčík. Interestingly, however, and somewhat surprisingly, it seems to have taken nearly 4 years before anyone noticed or even raised a complaint. Purists have demanded answers. It seems to have evoked as much disgust as the placement of a glass pyramid outside the Louvre in Paris in the 1980s. They are calling Jirčík's restoration an artistic atrocity, an act of delinquency, a national embarrassment. People are asking how such a travesty could have come about. It is alleged that the restorer is guilty of deliberately changing Josef Mánes' original painting, of which he was supposedly engaged to make a faithful copy, by substituting images of his friends and acquaintances that include a Czech politician and a well-known Czech author. It's also alleged that he changed deliberately the skin, age and skin colour of some of the original characters, and even adding an image of his own dog. The restorer, of course, denies anything of the sort. He says that he was merely following the brief that had been agreed before he started the restoration work. Later in this video, I will show you some of the changes, and you can decide for yourself as to the intentions of the restorer and whether or not the accusations against him are justified. And also, there is another very interesting footnote related to the restoration of the clock. However, first, as always, a bit of background. As pointed out in a previous video, in the middle of the 19th century, the Prague Astronomical Clock, or orloj, was in a sorry state, and so it was decided to set about restoring it. The task of repainting the calendar dial was given to Josef Mánes, a very famous Czech painter, and it was completed in 1866. Sometime later, the calendar dial needed to be restored, but by that time Mánes was dead, so to preserve Mánes' original, it was placed in the Museum of Prague, and another Czech painter, Emanuel Liška, was commissioned to do a copy of Mánes' original work. After the astronomical clock was badly damaged during the Prague Uprising of 1945, Bohumír Čiller was commissioned to do another version. Then, for the 100th anniversary of the founding of Czechoslovakia in 1918, it was decided to give the whole clock a good spruce-up, even recolouring the astrolabe, which again caused another controversy, but let's save that for another time. And, of course, the calendar dial. The entire expensive restoration was unveiled with great ceremony in 2018. I'm sure that you're aware that recently there have been a number of notorious restorations of paintings that haven't gone too well. These are the ones where an over-enthusiastic amateur takes pity on the state of a painting or sculpture and decides that they are best placed and skilled to restore the original to its former look. Without doubt, their intentions were well-meaning, but, like the astronomical clock, they have drawn outrage from art experts and historians who see them as blatant amateurism and brutal vandalism. On the other hand, these restorations have provoked much hilarity in a majority of people who find themselves laughing helplessly at the sheer audacity, crassness and incompetence of the restorer. But this is not the case of the restorer of the calendar dial, Stanislav Jirčík. In fact, he is by no means an amateur, but he is a graduate of the Faculty of Fine Arts in Prague and an experienced and skilled restorer. If you look at some of the examples of his work on his website, he seems to have done a very good and respectful restoration of a number of works, and it is no doubt that his artistry and skill helped him to win the tender to do the copy of Mánes' original calendar dial. So what is the problem? Well, the argument is that he seems to have stepped away too far from the original brief. It's alleged that he showed no respect for or had regard to Mánes' original work. But ironically, given the clock is 600 years old, it has already undergone a huge number of changes over the centuries. Again, previously, I highlighted how various aspects of the clock have been added to or changed over the centuries. Look at this drawing of the clock from 1836, compared to how the clock is now. For example, at one time there was also a statue of Kronos, as seen in this painting from the 18th century, but it was in such a bad state that it was replaced by a model of the Archangel Michael. Originally, Archangel Michael would point to the saint day with his scepter, but now that is indicated by a golden arrow at the 12 o'clock position on the calendar dial. The first of the working figures, the skeleton, was added in the 15th century, the walk of the apostles between the 17th and 18th century. No one really knows what the original apostles looked like. New sculptures were done by Edward Vesely in the late 19th century, but after they were completely destroyed by the Nazis in 1945, new sculptures were created by Wojciech Suchada, who we'll come back to in a moment. The mechanical golden rooster was added during the restoration of the 19th century, about 1882. Another major change in the 19th century was to the zodiac circle. Originally, it used to be the animal representations of the signs of the zodiac, but now it actually has the signs of the zodiac, and the wheel is divided into 72 separate sections, which vary in size according to the amount of daylight in a day. Further changes took place when the sculptor Wojciech Suchada had to replace all of the figures either side of the clock, as well as the apostles too. But he wasn't keen on making an exact replica of what had been there before the clock was destroyed in the Prague uprising of 45. He didn't want any of the statues to have turbans. He wanted to add builders, weavers, craftsmen. He also wanted to add Christ and Judas to the apostles. In a unique film available from British Pathé, he admitted how he changed and replenished the re-sculpted statuettes. He explained his choices and what the new attributes meant, but it seems that he was unhappy about his other ideas for the clock were rejected. And we'll come back to that footnote later, but as promised, here are some of the changes to Mánes's original work carried out by Jircik. The original is on the left. What do you think? Please leave your comments below. I respect thoroughly the views of those who are outraged by the changes, but as I have pointed out, the look of the clock has undergone many changes over the last 600 years, which, given its age, is not entirely unexpected. Personally, I was more outraged by the tacky, terribly touristy, trumpeting troubadour who used to play a fanfare after the clock had rung. I found the concept tacky, not the musician. And I was more offended by that than I am to the current changes to the calendar dial. Thankfully, the trumpeting troubadour has gone. And now to that final footnote, which relates to the changes to the clock and Wojciech Suchada I was telling you about. And it really is a footnote, in that it was a note found in the foot of one of the apostles. In fact, in the base of St. Thomas. During the restoration work in 2018, the apostles that had been resculptured by Suchada were weighed, and it was found that the apostle of St. Thomas was lighter, and something was rattling inside. An X-ray revealed that inside the base of the statue was a cylinder. They drilled out the base and pulled out a cylindrical tube. Inside the tube was an 18-page document written by Suchada in 1948. He wrote about what his actual plans for the restoration of the clock had been and what he wanted to see, and he railed against Purists like Václav Wojtyszek, who, Suchada claimed, had prevented him from implementing his new ideas for the Prague Astronomical clock. So, as I have shown you, there have been many changes to the clock over the years, as well as disagreements between purists and artists who wanted to add something new to this wonderful and unique clock. And that, dear people, brings me to the end of this video. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do click and subscribe and hit the little bell button so you're notified of any future videos. Once again, thank you for watching, and see you again next time.